The key question I always ask anybody who tells me I want to start a business, how much have you exposed yourself to the world outside? When you are starting to make that money, sustenance no longer excites you. We are all driven by growth.
Because like right now we're just looking at this camera, right? You don't know कि उसके पीछे there'll be like 20, 30, 40,000 people watching this.
So essentially today what's happening in that ecosystem is people are not betting on the business, they're betting on personalities.
Rajiv, welcome to this video. Thank you so much for joining me here. Love this place, love your office.
Thank you.
Makes me want to get one for myself as well. You know, I looked at your website and you talked about you have started 5 businesses, 2 of which went bust. Like, what was your learnings from that experience, you know?
Yeah, I think failure teaches you more than success does. So I think for me, my top lessons from those 2 business failures was number 1, don't start a business just because you see an opportunity. Start a business if you have a vision for that space, if you have core competence in that space, if you can create something of tangible value to your customers which is already not available in the market. So for me, one of my businesses was chalo yaar opportunity hai, kuch paise bana lenge, and I started it from that perspective. And over a period of time, I realized that that business was draining more energy than giving more energy. And I think that's an important indicator when you build a business. Is the business energizing you or is the business sucking away your energy? If you are aware of that metrics, then you can quickly validate whether this is something you want to do or not want to do. So for me, these have been some big important lessons from one of those failures. The other failure was more like you got to do your due diligence and not just go with the flow and trust people on face value. You got to ask for what is your rights. Basically, I got taken for granted and taken for a ride. We'd invested in infrastructure. We set up a BPO project management company. We were handling the back-end call center operations of a London-based bank, but we didn't do our agreements in the right way. We were through a third-party agency. So the third-party agency got paid for nothing and he didn't forward the payment to us. And we didn't invested heavily in infrastructure and manpower and technology and stuff. So lost a lot of money there, which taught me a lesson that you got to do your due diligence. I mean, you can't blame the guy for screwing you over. You served it on the platter to get screwed over. So yeah, these are some important lessons that I learned through those 2 business failures.
You must take accountability.
Absolutely. I mean, you can live bitter and sour and blame the world saying he did that to me, she did that to me, or you just forgive, move forward, forgive yourself for making that judgment error as well. That's important as well. And you just move forward and learn from that and grow stronger.
Totally agree. You know, this video is going to be more like a guide for people who are thinking to start their business. So starting out with the first question that people would be having is that what are the basic fundamentals that people should think about when they are thinking of starting a business, both from idea to hiring to growing, getting the first users and then scaling further? What fundamentals should they think about?
When it comes to ideas, see, ideas don't come when you're just sitting in one place, or ideas don't come when you're sitting in your classroom in your university. Ideas come when you expose yourself. That exposure could be out of the problems you are facing. That exposure could be by you doing internships, you taking up jobs in the initial stages and exposing yourself to different lines of work, to different sectors, to different industries. The ideas could come if you are coming from a family business environment and you've seen things happen, the problems that your family has faced in business. The key question I always ask anybody who tells me I want to start a business is I ask them, how much have you exposed yourself to the world outside? And if you haven't, then that's your first step. Because if you don't expose yourself, what ends up happening is you don't build an idea, you just take somebody else's idea. Like you see some of your friends doing well on social media, like, okay, chalo yaar, even I want to build a social media channel, I want to become a creator. And that's not your idea. It's not something that excited you. What excited you was the popularity and fame that your friend was getting. So I think exposure is very, very important. Once you're out of academic education, or even if you have the courage to confront that academic education is meaningless and you're doing it just for social approval, then you might as well design your own educational experience by going out there and doing internships. And I would say do internships not just in the fancy startups, but do internships in traditional businesses. Work with a Lala company and see how the management functions. Go on a internship and work with a manufacturing unit, work with a traditional trading business, work across departments. When you expose yourself for 3 to 5 years in something, then you have enough visibility to choose which opportunity resonates with you, which space excites you, What are your core competencies and capabilities? So I believe an idea always needs to originate from your vision, where you are able to see something that nobody else is seeing. It has to originate from your core competence and your passion. You got to enjoy doing it. You got to be comfortable with that line of work. So that's the first step for me, that you get your ideas through exposure. You don't get it by just sitting at home.
Why do you think people are afraid for starting a business and investing in it, while many people are happy to upgrade their phones, buy their sneakers and invest in fancy vacations and weddings, while not in a business that could get them their financial independence? And how can they avoid this thing and go forward?
See, I think business requires courage, which is in general missing in most people on the planet, right? Our perception of people and ourselves is that only we have fears, only we have insecurities, only we have doubts, and everybody else around us is very confident. So if I start a business, my insecurities will get showcased and people will take me for a ride, or I'll get screwed over, or things won't work. Everybody has that kind of perception where they kind of look down upon themselves more and they place others at a pedestal saying, wow, that's the kind of person you should be. What people miss seeing is everybody's broken, everybody's imperfect, everybody has white, black, gray, everybody has fears, insecurities. Once you embrace that reality, you kind of build a neutral relationship with fear itself. Once you have that neutral relationship with fear and you say that, yeah, it's a part and parcel, I'm never going to get rid of it, I'm going to experience it, but it's not going to harm me because it's just a emotion and a perception, it is not who I am. Once you develop that awareness and understanding, your appetite for courage increases. And when your appetite for courage is high, then you can build something which is of value, of scale. And that's where you see even people who start businesses, most of them don't start something and build something of value and scale. They start something only for sustenance. Sustenance is exciting when you start, but after some time, when you are starting to make that money, sustenance no longer excites you. We are all driven by growth, but most people, what they do is they're working spiritually backwards with themselves, where they're sabotaging growth, they're sabotaging exploring and experiencing. They want to be in their own box, do what's safe, do what's right. Therefore, the sneaker excites them more because it'll give them social approval. The holiday, the vacation, the selfies excite them more because that'll give them social approval. They're not playing for personal development. Most people are just playing for social approval. Most people are just in their own bubbles.
How can someone transition from that phase of playing social status games to focusing on starting a business or creating value for users?
You either grow through personal awareness and consciousness, or you go through pain. When life slaps you on the face, when that girlfriend or boyfriend walks out on you and you are at your lowest low, and that's when you decide to do something more meaningful with your own life, that pain can sometimes become a great accelerator to get more creative, build something of value to reinstate your own self-esteem. Or you naturally need to be inclined to personal development, to consciousness, to awakening, to awareness as a concept and an idea. So I always say this, people who consume educational content on the internet are probably in the elite 1% of the planet, because 99% of them don't even consume educational content on the internet. They just consume trends, they consume reels, they consume kacha badam, and that's not going to get them anywhere in life, right? So the fact that if somebody is watching this, they belong to that 1% elite, which means they have the resonance with awareness and consciousness. They just need to now honor that a lot more and build the basic building blocks of exposure so that they can come up with an idea, learning so that they can build the core competence, and the courage by neutralizing their own relationship with failure. So if they're able to do these three things, they're good to go. They're good to get started, right?
Wonderful. You've been very much vocal about having a bootstrap business versus taking funding.
Yeah.
Most people have glamorized funding in this world that we live in. What are the pitfalls of taking funding from an external investor, and what are the things that people should be aware about, which they don't get to see in the fireside chats and the news headlines?
So it's like this, the basic definition of an entrepreneur, or one of the most prominent, significant, important characteristics of an entrepreneur is freedom. And the moment you take funding, you're no longer free. You're answerable to someone else. Now, I'm not saying don't take funding because you have to report to your VCs or to your auditors. It's good to be answerable, but it's not good to become a puppet of their desires. A VC is coming in for an exit. They're not coming in for sustenance, customer value and stuff like that. Yeah, in a startup conference, they'll all do lip service and tell you that we're looking at customer-centric businesses who want to build something which will add value to people. But fundamentally, they're looking at the next round of investor who will give them a better exit. And eventually that next round to next round to next round, and the final round is going to be public, the masses whom you've hypnotized through branding and marketing, saying that we are a credible brand and you can believe in us. So the large mass of consumers and investors, the retail investors are like, wow, I trust this brand. I've seen it for the last 7-8 years. They've done some cutting edge stuff. Let me buy money. Let me buy the shares of that. But there's no fundamental business value. So I think if you value freedom and if you value fundamentals, if you're clear about those fundamentals and you value your freedom, then bootstrapping is sexy. Bootstrapping was, is, and always will be sexy, right? This entire thing of over glorifying funding, over glorifying startups that have raised investments without any rationality on their business models. It's not even a game of skill, it's a game of relationships. If you're well networked, you know the who's who in the space. You give a 2% equity to one guy, his name is on your cap table, his credibility will get the next guy, and then the next guy's credibility will get the next guy. So essentially today what's happening in that ecosystem is people are not betting on the business, they're betting on personalities. You are telling me the guy you gave 2% equity just because of their personal brand in the startup ecosystem is going to come and work with you in your office and build that business? They don't even care. For them, it's 2% coming at a peanut price of 5 lakh rupees to tear an angel investor's check. 5 lakh rupees doesn't even matter to that guy. So he's playing like a roulette game in a casino where he's put a dime on every number. Kuch to lagega.
Right.
So that guy is not bothered about the business. That guy is bothered about kuch to lagega. One will hit the jackpot.
That is true. You know, I was talking with a YC-backed startup guy. The founder was like, oh, we are backed by Kunal Shah. And Kunal Shah might have only invested maybe like 1% of total amount of funding that they've raised, but he gets to say Kunal Shah. And even when I started Market Up, you know, the first week I got a call from Kunal Bell. He's like, I want to understand your business and we'll see if this is possible for us to invest and all. So as you said, like if you have networking opportunities and people would definitely want to know and invest into you. That is definitely.
Today money gets raised on networks, not on the merit of ideas. That's the bare naked reality. Today there's a template, right? You come up with a basic idea, an MVP, a proof of concept. You take it out to a person who has a good network and you say, look, we believe in the idea, we'll build, we'll be passionate. We just need you on board on our cap table. Just a token investment. You get that person's name, okay? And then through that person's name, you raise a bigger round of funding. And then you burn that money in acquiring customers. And you're acquiring customers who will never pay for that service. So your proof of concept hasn't worked.
Do you think funding is a Ponzi scheme?
It is.
And how does it work?
99% of the cases, it's a Ponzi scheme. I'll tell you what happens. Most of these guys who raise money over a period of time, they just get focused on raising another round and another round and another round. And they're just acquiring users to raise the valuation. They're not bothered about the fundamental viability of the business, the financial viability of the business. And over a period of time, when they have raised too many rounds and now they're too big, too known, what do? They use the money that they've raised not to build the fundamentals in the business because it didn't exist in the first place. They use the money that they raised to partner with marketing agencies, to partner with HR consultants, to partner with suppliers and vendors and tell them that, okay, you tear an invoice for this amount of money, you give me a certain portion of it back to me, and then that becomes their personal side income. So the guy makes, say if he's raised 100 crores, he would have drawn out at least 5 to 8 crores from these side kickbacks on his own business, and then they'll become angel investors in other startups. So they're only building personal brands, they're not building actual businesses. It's the unfortunate, I'm not saying all of them are like that, but it's the unfortunate reality of a large number of them. It discomforts me because these are people who are good at marketing. They're good at earning trust. They're good at establishing respect. But when they play this as a Ponzi, it's heartbreaking that they're degenerating the culture of entrepreneurship in the country. Use funding for scale once you've proven the model. Is your customer spending money on your product or service? And at that price point, are you profitable? And then you use money for scaling it up. I'm not against funding. I do angel investing myself with startups. But for me, the fundamentals has to be strong, and the entrepreneur has to value their own freedom and autonomy, because tomorrow you don't want to be at the mercy of a bunch of investors who are sitting on your board and can veto you and do what's right for them, may not be what's right for your own vision. And I've heard stories of some entrepreneurs who've done great and they are poster boys of the Indian ecosystem, but they've been arm twisted to just do what's right for the board, which is the investors, and not what's right for their vision. So I'm a big fan of bootstrap business for that simple reason. What's the hurry? What's the hurry? I mean, most people are in a hurry. They just want to raise rounds of funding, burn money on IPL. Yeah, burn money on IPL ads, be in the presentation ceremony to give the man of the match award. That's their template. Most of these guys are living lifestyles that they could have never earned by themselves.
Wonderful. You talked about education as well, right? What do you think is the relevance of MBA degrees right now in helping people to start a business? Or people always have this thing ना कि ये degree कर लूँ फिर MBA फिर business start कर लूँ या फिर ये college खत्म हो जाए फिर business start कर दूँगा. So what do you think about that?
So firstly, I have very strong opinions on this, because I genuinely believe that most students, when they graduate, they should go out there and either get a job or start a business to give themselves practical work exposure, and probably after 3 to 5 years of working practically, then an MBA degree may make sense. Join an MBA course straight after graduation because they didn't get a job and they don't have a business idea. It's almost like an escape strategy from home, and something their parents will be proud of showcasing. Parents can't say campus recruitment में कुछ नहीं हुआ तो इसलिए MBA में डाल रहे हैं. Parents will be proud to say नहीं उसको advanced, उसको post graduation करना ही था तो इसलिए MBA. Firstly, I think the relevance and the significance of an MBA gets diluted if you've not practically worked in the real world. I'm a big believer that if you're doing an MBA, do it from a tier A, top 5, top 10 B schools in the country or in the world, because every other MBA college is just a real estate project done by a politician or a builder, where they have large masses of lands on the outskirts of the city, and education is a great commodity to sell, where they create prospectus and presentations to sell admissions by saying, we have a Olympic sized swimming pool, we give you a Dell laptop on admission, and we take you for an education tour to Bangkok in the second year. I mean, what the hell do people get educated in Bangkok for? Happy endings or what? Anything less than the best B schools in the country or in the world is just an escaping strategy. And it's a very respectful escapist strategy. Because people are like, MBA कर रहा है, बहुत अच्छा, बहुत अच्छा, बहुत अच्छा. वो MBA actually माँ बाप पर ऐसा नहीं, MBA माँ बाप पर ऐसा नहीं. So that's what it is.
Wow. You know, you have been communicating very well. I've watched a bunch of your podcasts and videos as well. Most of my audience is trying to learn how to sell themselves in like a job interview, or how to communicate their thoughts, right? Yeah. So like one of the things is that how can someone get better communication skills? Okay. According to you.
People may not believe this when I say this, but by personality, I'm an extreme introvert. I'm socially awkward, extremely introverted. My wife keeps complaining, saying that you don't talk at home. बाहर तो जाके training देते हो, video बनाते हो. I said, तुम भी पैसे दो, तुमसे भी बात करना शुरू. I think for me, growing up, I grew up with a lot of low self-esteem. I was the shortest person in my class, so every time the teacher in school would say, everybody form a line, everybody say Rajiv, 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 because you know line इसके बाद ही शुरू होनी है, right? So you grow up with being made fun of कि ये छोटू इधर आगे खड़ kind of a thing. And then to add to that, I was asthmatic. That's the gift you get when you are born and brought up in Bangalore. So in a sports day, I wouldn't even complete a 100-meter race. So you kind of build these scars, right? You build these scars that, okay, I'm short, I am not healthy, I'm not fit, I'm not good at sports. My basketball throw would not even touch the hoop. All those things kind of build a belief system. At least for me, it did build a belief system. You're not good enough. And when you have the belief system, you kind of hide yourself. So I closed myself to the world. And then, like any average normal person, in your early teens, you have that crush who crushes you, and your self-esteem saying, no, we are just friends. So I had all these layers that gotten built.
Chip on your shoulder.
And I never thought I'd do anything useful. But then I think those early bruises are beautiful. Because those early bruises make you an underdog. And then all you need is that one experience that kind of shatters all these belief systems in one shot. And you're like, okay, I can do this, I got this. So I think what most people need to do if they've got to get better at communication is actually look within and acknowledge all those bruises and say, thank you for challenging me. Thank you for giving me the gift of early failures. Early success is fearful, it's scary, it makes you complacent. It sets your benchmark so high that you're not willing to reinvent yourself. But when you have early bruises and early failures, nobody's counting on you for anything. Okay, so when you realize that freedom that comes with those early bruises, then you realize, I've seen the worst. So what's the worst that can happen when I communicate? I won't die, right? And I truly believe that people who struggle with communication are great thinkers. Introverts are amazing thinkers. So all you got to do is translate your thoughts in expression. And language is just a skill that gets developed the more you do it, right? Today, if I can be articulate, it's because at the age of 17, I made a decision to say, nobody's counting on me for anything. So I might as well just put out what I'm thinking. And as I started expressing, because as an introvert, I'm not outside most of the time and I'm inside with myself, I am building perceptions, judgments, awarenesses about everyone around me. So my observations are very subtle. So when I articulate them, people are like, yeah, you're stating the obvious. This is something we all thought, but nobody said it. And I think that's another capability of great communicators. You're able to say the obvious. So communication is about stating the obvious. It's about expressing your true self, and the only way to get out of those fears is to realize that even after you express your true self, you won't die. So yeah, that's how you bring yourself out.
I used to write diary entries every single day when I was little in my school time, and then when I entered into college, I was like, I'll just record myself and just talk about what I did every single day, and that slowly made me more open to talking to people, talking in front of the camera. And last month itself, I went and finally started meeting people who watch my videos. I went to colleges, audiences of like 1,000 people in front of me, wanting to listen to me, and that was a crazy experience. Because like right now we're just looking at this camera, right? You don't know कि उसके पीछे there'll be like 20, 30, 40,000 people watching this. It's a crazy experience, but I have learned a lot in this journey. So grateful for this.
I mean, kudos experience. To you. You serve as an inspiration to so many people who think कि life is just college करके फिर job लेना है या B school join करना है, उसके बाद job ले लेंगे, या तो you have to chase a startup idea जहाँ पर funding उठा सके. You've really broken that mold and inspired so many people to say just journal yourself, put yourself out there, and people resonate with that authenticity, right?
Seek discomfort.
Yeah, absolutely. Seek discomfort. That's beautifully said.
What do you think is the most important skill one should master if they are thinking about building value for someone?
When you think about building value for someone, I think the most important skill that you need to have is you need to have the ability to listen. Most people think business is this charismatic activity where you got to be out there and you got to be talking. In any conversation, if you're speaking more than 35%, you are not taking away anything from that conversation. The other person is. So my ratio always in a conversation, of course, beyond this podcast, so you are the one who is taking away all the learning from this conversation, is that you got to speak 35% of the time, you got to listen 65% of the time. And essentially what you speak is questions. You ask questions. So if you want to build something of value, you got to be good at asking questions. You got to be good at listening. That's what gives you insight. And then you validate that with multiple people by asking them similar questions. You get the same insight. Then you know that you identified something that people value. You can build something around it. Then you're sorted. Yeah. So
do you like reading books?
No. I just can't stay with a book. The only book I've probably read, and I've read it twice, is the Bhagwat Gita. It's like my go-to book. I sleep with it by the side of my head. I read my own book once before giving the final version to my publisher. It landed up with 126 spelling mistakes and grammatical errors. I'm not someone who's into books. Is it a habit I'm proud of? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Sometimes I get away by saying I don't read books. So when I say I don't read books, there are books that I have, and there are books that I open and probably I read 1 or 2 pages. But I don't have capacity to sit through a book. You ask me to meditate for 30 minutes, I can do that. I can't read a book. So my source of learning is mentors. My source of learning is people, networking, conversations. That's where my learning comes from.
What is the biggest lesson or the best thing that you've learned from Bhagwat Gita?
So I think my most important lesson from the Bhagwat Gita is that you got to do what's right. Krishna's conversation with Arjuna is about dharma. And I think that's the beauty of the teaching of Bhagwat Gita. It justified war, essentially. right? And I think that's important in the world that we live in. I think that's the most practical teaching. Now, I'm not saying we should go on war, but I think what I love about the Bhagwat Gita is its practicality, because in the world we live in, not everybody may come with the intent, with the integrity, with the purity that you may carry. So for me, the biggest lesson from the Gita is that evaluate the person who's next in front of you. Is that person forthcoming, person of intent, person of integrity? If they are, you go all out, be vulnerable, give as much as you can, okay, do as much as you can for that person. But if you come across a transactional person who is being the way they are with you only because of their own benefits, then you can't just take the principle of be good to all, be nice to all. You can't take that principle and apply it on the context of that person. So for me, dharma, standing for what's right, okay, what's fair, what's just, I think that's one of my most important lessons. And it probably also comes from the fact that through my journey growing up, I was naturally trained to be very vulnerable, open and trusting. Whatever I would experience, I would end up feeling bitter and sour and lesser about myself. But when I realized that you can live without people, if Arjuna could go to war with his own cousins, then you don't have to be attached to any relationship. The one relationship you have to be attached to is yourself, okay, your consciousness, your inner truth. Carry that out to people with empathy. People who get it, they are your tribe, they vibe with you. People who don't, you don't need everybody in your life. So I think that dharma, justice, fairness is a very important lesson for me.
This interview, this conversation started with business and ended on wisdom and Bhagwat Gita.
I think I always say this, that business is a spiritually evolving exercise. When you start a business, you have to put your identity against your business, and that identity is susceptible to failure if the business fails. You got to go out there and sell. You got to be humble and grounded every day. You got to be willing to be challenged. You got to be in the moment. You can't rest on your past laurels. So if all of these are not characteristics of applied spirituality, then what is?
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining me here. I'm sure the audience would have learned a lot from this conversation that we just had. Guys, what's the one learning that you've taken from this? Let me know in the comment section. Thank you so much for watching. Go check out Rajiv's Instagram. There's a lot to learn from him, and we'll see you in the next video.
Done.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Ishan.
Thank you so much.